Good evening, and welcome. Tonight's story explores an urban legend whispered in late-night forums, buried inside forgotten police files, and retold in shaky voices around dim bedroom lights. It is a story about something pale and watching, something that does not knock, something that waits at the foot of your bed and studies you as you sleep. They call it the Rake. Some describe it as a creature. Others insist it is a hallucination shared by frightened minds. A few believe it is older than cities, older than written language itself. A presence that surfaces whenever fear ripens in the dark. But what makes the legend disturbing is not its appearance. It is the pattern. The way sightings follow the same quiet script. And tonight, we follow one such pattern. Daniel Harper had never believed in urban legends. At 28, he was a freelance videographer living alone in a rented house on the outskirts of town, the kind of place bordered by thin forest and long stretches of empty road. It was quiet, affordable, and ideal for someone who worked from home. The first incident happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. Daniel woke abruptly at 3:17 a.m. There was no thunder, no nightmare, no sound he could consciously identify, just a sharp awareness, as if someone had called his name without making a sound. His room was dark except for faint moonlight filtering through half-drawn curtains. He lay still, listening. The house was silent, refrigerator humming distantly, wood settling in the cold. Then he noticed something strange. His bedroom door, which he always closed before sleeping, was slightly open, only by a few inches. Daniel frowned. He distinctly remembered shutting it. He was meticulous about that. The forest outside made him uneasy at night. He told himself it was nothing. Air pressure. Old hinges. But then his eyes adjusted further. There was a shape near the foot of his bed. At first, it looked like a distortion in the darkness, a bend where shadow should not bend. Then it shifted. Slowly. It was low to the ground. Pale. Thin in a way that felt anatomically wrong. Its limbs folded at harsh angles. Its head tilted slightly, as though studying him. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He did not scream. He could not. The figure did not rush him. It did not growl. It simply crouched there, unnaturally still, long fingers resting against the floorboards. And then, in a movement so fluid it barely seemed real, it retreated backward into the darker portion of the room, toward the open door. Daniel blinked. The space at the end of his bed was empty. The door stood ajar. His body jolted into motion. He flipped on the bedside lamp. Nothing. No footprints. No disturbed carpet. No sign of forced entry. He checked every window. Locked. Every door. Secure. He searched the house, heart pounding, camera in hand like a makeshift weapon. The living room, kitchen, bathroom, all undisturbed. By morning, exhaustion replaced fear. Sleep paralysis, he told himself. A stress response. He had been working long hours editing footage for a documentary on internet myths, ironically including urban legends like the Rake. The coincidence unsettled him. He opened his laptop that afternoon and reviewed his research files. Reports dating back to the early 2000s described a pale humanoid figure appearing in bedrooms. Victims reported waking up suddenly, sensing a presence, finding a crouched shape watching them. The details aligned too precisely. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He had not mentioned the experience to anyone. Yet the online accounts describe his night almost perfectly. That evening, he installed a motion-activated camera facing his bedroom door. Just for peace of mind. Just to prove to himself that nothing was there. At 3:17 a.m., he woke again. This time, the door was wide open. And from somewhere deep inside the house, something shifted, not loudly, not violently, but with deliberate movement, as if it knew he was awake. And it was coming closer. What had Daniel invited into his home? And why did it seem to follow a precise, repeating hour? The camera was recording. But what, exactly, would it capture? Daniel did not move at first. He lay frozen beneath the covers, staring at the dark outline of his open doorway. The digital clock beside his bed still glowed 3:17 a.m. Its red numbers steady, indifferent. From the hallway came a faint sound. Not a footstep. Not quite a scrape, but something softer. A careful redistribution of weight. Like fingers testing the floorboards. His throat tightened. He reached slowly toward the bedside lamp. Every nerve in his body screaming not to look away from the doorway. The moment the light flicked on, the hallway beyond was empty. Still. Silent. But the air felt occupied. Daniel forced himself up. His legs trembled as they touched the floor. He grabbed his phone and stepped into the hallway, scanning the narrow stretch toward the living room. Shadows pulled along the walls where framed photographs hung slightly crooked. Nothing. He checked the front door. Locked. Windows. Secured. Closets. Empty. The house was exactly as it should be, and yet not. He returned to his bedroom and closed the door firmly, locking it this time. Then he sat at his desk, staring at the small monitor connected to the motion camera. It was still recording. Hand shaking, he rewound the footage to 3:15 a.m. The grainy black and white video showed his bedroom in infrared. Daniel asleep under his blanket. The door closed. 3:16 a.m. Nothing. 3:17 a.m. The door handle twitched. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. The handle turned slowly, deliberately, until the door eased open without a sound. His stomach dropped. The hallway beyond appeared empty at first. Then, from the lower edge of the frame, something entered. It did not walk upright. It crawled. Its limbs were elongated, joints bending too sharply. Its torso was narrow, ribs faintly visible beneath pale skin that reflected the infrared light like bone. The head was hairless, its features indistinct but unmistakably fixed on the bed. On him. Daniel watched his sleeping body shift slightly in the footage. The figure paused. It tilted its head. The movement was slow, curious, almost analytical. Then it advanced, crawling closer to the foot of the bed. Daniel's breathing grew shallow as he watched, himself lying defenseless on the screen. The creature extended one long arm toward him, stopping inches from his foot. And then, abruptly, Daniel's sleeping form stirred. The creature recoiled instantly, retreating backward with unnatural speed. It slipped out of frame and disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. The timestamp read 3:18 a.m. Daniel jerked back from the monitor as though the thing might emerge from it. He replayed the footage twice more, hoping for distortion, glitch, anything that might explain it away. There was none. The next morning, he did what any rational person would do when confronted with the impossible. He searched for answers. He revisited archived posts about the Rake, eyewitness accounts, supposed psychiatric case files. One particular entry caught his attention. A thread discussing repeated visitations. The pattern was precise. Victims reported that once the Rake appeared, it returned nightly, always at roughly the same time, each encounter bringing it slightly closer. Some accounts ended abruptly. Users stopped posting. Blogs went inactive. One archived message stood out. It doesn't attack immediately. It studies. It learns. When it finally makes contact, it's already decided something. Daniel swallowed hard. That night, he did not sleep. He positioned additional cameras in the hallway and living room. He left lights on throughout the house. He even placed a heavy dresser in front of his bedroom door. At 3:16 a.m., the house was silent. At 3:17 a.m., the power went out. The lights snapped off simultaneously. The monitors died. The sudden darkness felt absolute. Daniel's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out all other sound. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then, from just beyond the barricaded door, came a slow, deliberate scratching. Not frantic. Not animalistic. Intentional. A thin line of pale fingers slid beneath the narrow gap between the door and the floor, probing, flexing. Daniel stumbled backward, breath ragged. The scratching stopped. Silence returned. And then, impossibly, from somewhere inside his room, behind him, came a faint, uneven exhale, as if something had already found another way in. If the doors were blocked and the windows sealed, how had it entered? And more importantly, had it ever truly left? That question did not feel rhetorical anymore. It felt literal. Daniel did not turn around immediately. The faint exhale behind him was uneven, almost fragile, as if whatever produced it was adjusting to the air inside the room. The darkness pressed in from all sides, thick and disorienting after the sudden loss of power. His bedroom, once familiar and controlled, now felt rearranged by something unseen. Slowly, carefully, Daniel reached for the flashlight on his desk. The beam snapped on. The room was empty. The dresser still blocked the door. The thin line beneath it showed no fingers now. The windows were closed, curtains unmoving. Dust floated lazily through the white cone of light. He rotated in place, sweeping every corner. Nothing. But the air felt disturbed, colder near the ceiling, warmer near the floor, as if something had moved quickly through it moments ago. Daniel's mind raced. The scratching at the door had been real. The fingers under the gap had been real. Yet the exhale had come from behind him. Two locations at once. Unless it had never been outside the door to begin with. A slow realization crept over him. The power outage. He checked his phone. No signal. No service. Battery at 42%. He stepped toward the window and pulled the curtain aside. The neighboring houses were dark too, but not completely. A few porch lights still glowed faintly in the distance. So the outage was not widespread. It was localized. His house alone sat in unnatural darkness. A quiet tremor passed through him. He turned back toward the room, and that was when he saw it. Not clearly, Not fully, but reflected in the black screen of his dead computer monitor. A shape behind him. Low to the ground. Daniel spun around, flashlight beam jerking wildly across the walls. Empty. When he looked back at the monitor reflection, the shape was gone. His breathing grew uneven. Fear was no longer sharp and explosive. It was settling into something colder, more calculated. Whatever this presence was, it was not simply appearing. It was maneuvering, learning, testing reactions. Daniel grabbed his camera. The handheld one he used for work, grateful it operated on battery power. He turned it on and aimed it toward the room while watching the live screen. Instead of the space directly, through the digital display. The room seemed slightly distorted, shadows darker, edges sharper. Then, near the ceiling in the corner above his closet, the pixel shifted. The rake clung there. Its limbs were splayed outward. Fingers dug into drywall as if gravity meant nothing. Its head hung downward at a severe angle. Watching him from above with hollow, unblinking focus, Daniel staggered backward. On the camera screen, it moved. Not in the room. Only on the screen. Its head tilted, mirroring his earlier movement from the footage. Then the feed glitched violently. Static swallowed the image. The camera died. At that exact moment, the bedroom door slammed from the outside, despite being barricaded. The dresser scraped across the floor several inches. Daniel lunged forward, bracing his weight against it. The scratching returned, louder now. Faster. Not frantic, but purposeful. As though it had finished observing and was beginning something else. The scratching stopped abruptly. Silence fell again. Seconds stretched. Then his phone buzzed in his hand. Signal restored. A single notification appeared from an unknown number. No contact name. Just a blank message thread. A new message loaded. It sees you. Daniel stared at the words, pulse hammering in his ears. Another message followed instantly. You looked back. His blood ran cold. He had never posted about his experience. Never shared the footage. The only person who had seen it was him. Unless someone, or something, had accessed his files. A final message appeared. 317 is almost over. The power surged back on. Lights flickered to life. The scratching ceased. The dresser stood firmly in place again as though it had never moved. Daniel checked the clock. 3:19 a.m. 2 minutes unaccounted for. He opened the bedroom door cautiously. The hallway was empty. But at the far end, near the front door, faint marks scored the wooden floorboards, long, parallel scratches leading toward the living room, toward the forest-facing window. The pattern was becoming clearer. It wasn't trapped inside with him. It was choosing when to enter, choosing when to leave. And it seemed to grow bolder with every night. Daniel stepped into the hallway, following the scratches with trembling steps. At the end of the hall, he noticed something new. The front door, still locked, had a thin vertical crack running down the center of the wood, as if pressure had been applied from the inside. If it could manipulate electricity, move without sound, and appear both inside and outside at will. Was it bound to the house at all? Or was it bound to him? That possibility settled over Daniel with a heavier weight than any locked door or shattered floorboard. If the house was not the anchor, then leaving would not end this. Running would not reset the pattern. The time, 3:17 a.m., had followed him, not the walls. The next day, he packed a bag. Not frantically. Not like someone fleeing in panic. He moved with the numb precision of a man testing a theory. Laptop. Camera drives. Car keys. Phone charger. He avoided looking too long at reflective surfaces. Before stepping out, he turned once more toward the hallway. The scratch marks remained faint but visible, like dried veins in the wood. The crack in the front door had not widened. It all looked disturbingly normal in daylight. Daniel locked the house behind him and drove. He chose a motel nearly 40 miles away, just off a quiet highway. Fluorescent lit lobby. Neutral carpets. The kind of place where nothing unusual ever happens, at least on the surface. He checked in under his real name. That detail would matter later. The room was small but clean. One bed. One chair. One door. No forest. No isolation. Daniel exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. He set up a single camera facing the door. At 3:16 a.m., he was awake. At 3:17 a.m., the motel room phone rang. The sound tore through the silence like a blade. Daniel stared at it. No one else should have known he was here. The ringing stopped after 5 seconds. Then the bathroom light flicked on. He had not touched the switch. Daniel rose slowly, every step deliberate. The bathroom door was closed. A thin line of light glowed beneath it. He reached for the handle. Before he could turn it, something struck the door from the inside. Not hard. Just once. A measured impact. Daniel stumbled backward. The overhead lights began to flicker, dim, bright, dim, as though struggling against invisible interference. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. A new message appeared. Distance does not change proximity. The bathroom door handle began to turn. Slowly. The door opened inward. The light inside went out instantly. Darkness pulled in the doorway. Daniel forced himself to step forward and flip the bathroom switch. The light returned. The bathroom was empty. The mirror above the sink, however, was no longer clear. Words had been traced into the condensation, though the mirror had been dry minutes ago. 3 simple lines. I watched you sleep. You watched me back. Now you understand. Daniel's pulse pounded in his skull. This was no longer about intrusion. It was about acknowledgement. He returned to the main room and froze. The camera facing the door had fallen onto its side. The motel door itself stood slightly open. He was certain he had locked it. Beyond the gap stretched a long, dim corridor lit by cold fluorescent light. Empty. Daniel approached the doorway slowly. Halfway there, the hallway lights went out. One by one. Beginning at the far end. Each section snapping into darkness, drawing closer toward his room. The last remaining light outside flickered above his door. And in that flicker, Daniel saw it. Not in full. Just enough. Low to the ground at the end of the corridor. Pale. Waiting. The final light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Daniel slammed the door shut and locked it. Silence. Complete and suffocating. Seconds passed. Then came a soft sound from inside the room. Not from the door. Not from the bathroom. From beneath the bed. A slow, careful shifting of weight. Daniel's breathing fractured. The pattern had escalated. It was no longer observing from corners or thresholds. It was inside his space, fully. And then, in the darkness just inches above the floor, 2 pale hands slid out from beneath the bed frame. Long fingers stretching outward. Reaching. Daniel staggered backward, colliding with a wall. He understood now. The legend was wrong. The Rake did not attack randomly. It did not feed on flesh. It fed on recognition. On the moment a witness accepted that it was real. The first night, it watched. The second, it tested. The third, it communicated. And now, on the fourth, it claimed. The hands gripped the edge of the bed. A pale head began to rise slowly into view. Its hollow eyes locked onto him. There was no rage in its expression. No hunger. Only completion. As if something inevitable had reached its final step. Daniel felt the room narrow, sound collapsing inward. His mind searched desperately for logic, for structure, but none remained. The clock on the nightstand glowed faintly. 3:17 a.m. The creature tilted its head one final time. And in that stillness, Daniel understood the last truth of the legend. The Rake does not choose houses. It chooses awareness. Once you see it clearly, it never needs to hide again. The motel hallway lights flickered back on at 3:19 a.m. The room was empty. The bed undisturbed. No signs of forced entry. Only a phone left charging on the nightstand. And on its screen, one final unsent draft message. It's not in the house. It's in. The rest remained unfinished. Some urban legends fade with disbelief. Others survive because no one can prove them. But every so often, someone wakes at 3:17 a.m., sensing a presence near the foot of the bed. And somewhere in the darkness, something pale tilts its head, waiting to be seen.